Hey everyone, and welcome to Itenov Healthcare Solutions webinar. We're excited to be presenting NextGen PM tools for managing unapplieds, deposits, refunds, and credit balances. My name is Chelsea Grover, and I'm the Marketing Communications Coordinator for Itenov. I'd like to take a moment to explain the process for today's presentation. First, I'd like to mention that this webinar will be recorded, and that we'll be sending out a copy of the slides along with the recording within the next week. Next, for those of you who aren't familiar with Itenov, I wanted to share a bit of who we are with you. We specialize specifically in NextGen healthcare, and we're good at getting data into, out of, around, and through NextGen. Basically, our goal in life is to make delighted clients by helping them get the absolute most out of their NextGen software investment. We're passionate about providing solutions for our healthcare provider partners, which in turn help them to improve patient care, enhance the patient experience, and maintain a financially healthy practice. To sum it up, we do everything NextGen. We also have NextGen add-on productivity solutions for NextGen, including ChartGuard and Refund Manager. We'll be talking about those today. Speaking of, I wanted to mention our next webinar is going to be on Tuesday on ChartGuard for NextGen. ChartGuard is a NextGen add-on product that makes PDF copies of your patient charts and appointment book so you can always see patients even during a system outage or a similar event. If you're interested in learning more about ChartGuard, either join us for a webinar on Tuesday or drop us a line in the questions area of the webinar panel requesting more information on it. Okay, so back to today's presentation. At the end of the presentation, we'll open the floor up to questions from you. We'll answer all the questions at the end, but you can type them in the questions area of the webinar control panel whenever they occur to you. And finally, for audio clarity purposes, everyone's phone will remain muted throughout the entire webinar. If you experience audio issues, please use the chat box to let us know so we can resolve them. And again, questions may be entered in the questions box. So before I hand the webinar over to Tom and Joe, I wanted to do a quick poll to try to gauge your area of interest so we can tailor our information to areas that you're more interested in hearing about. So I'm going to launch this poll. Hang on. Okay, so I'm going to launch this poll, and if you just want to take a minute and select what areas you're most interested in hearing about, that way we can make sure that we cover those more in detail than other areas that that we might also be talking about. So if you want to click on your webinar control panel and everybody, or on the screen of the webinar, and vote for which ones you are most interested in learning about. Give everybody another minute to finish answering that. Okay, and I'm gonna shut this down. Let's see. Okay, so it looks like people are most interested in learning about resolving a backlog of unapplied credits, using unapplied credits as deposits for future procedures, and zeroing out balance control. But we also do have some interest in issuing refunds to patient or insurances, or moving around line item credits between charges and encounters. So there you go, Tom and Joe. That's what we need to be focusing on today, and thank you everybody for voting. I'm going to go ahead and hide this, and we will keep going. Our presenters for today, Tom Seco is Itenov's Business Development Manager and Subject Matter Expert on the products, and Joe Schultz is Director of Product Solutions at Itenov, which means that he and his team are the people that actually built these programs and is thus in a great position to demonstrate them. So Tom, I'm going to go ahead and pass the webinar off to you. Feel free to get started when you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much, Chelsea. So thank you again for taking the time today to learn more about how to manage your unapplied deposits, refunds, and credit balances. Just a brief agenda. This is what we're going to cover today. So we're going to cover two areas that are related to practice management side. How to handle credit balances on your patient accounts and the processing of unapplied balances on your patient accounts. You'll gain an understanding of how you can do this more efficiently and more effectively using these two add-on products, Refund Manager and the Unapplied Deposit Manager software. I will then tell you a little bit more about who we are and answer any questions that you may have at the end as well. So the format for today's webinar is I'll start off the webinar by giving you an overview so you can gain some background on what we're going to cover today. And then I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and he's going to show you how each of the products will help your staff be more efficient and more productive when processing credit balances and unapplied balances on your patient accounts. So Refund Manager, we'll start with Refund Manager, and I'll give you an overview of Refund Manager. So Refund Manager, the purpose of the the software is to make your job easier and increase productivity. We know what we did is we looked at the process from start to finish, and we looked for ways to streamline and automate the credit balance handling and refund check processing within the practice. And when we were done, that translated into enabling you to be more effective and more efficient when managing your credit balances. So how do we do this? Well, we do it, one, by streamlining the process on the front end by making it much easier for you to find credit balances on the patient accounts through the various filters and search mechanisms that we've created. And then you can also apply credits to the encounters that have open balances on them. And then we automated the processes and the places within the process that we could eliminate data entry. So one of these areas is by being able to interface with your accounting application. Refund Manager interfaces with many different accounting applications. So you'll see how that works in the demonstration that Joe takes you through. And then being able to easily move that refund information over to your accounting application. And then for those of you that have multiple practices set up in NextGen, Refund Manager has the capability to look across all of the practices for a full picture, so you don't have to switch between practices. As I mentioned, we went through and we looked at the process from start to finish. The process covers basically three functional areas: one, a billing area, the accounting area, and then data entry. When you look at processing a credit, you can do it in either a reactive manner or a proactive manner. In a reactive manner, we have a patient that calls up and says, I have a credit on my account and I'd like to have a refund issued to me. And in a proactive manner, we have a report that we go through every week or every 2 weeks, and we process our credits in a methodical manner. In either case, whether it's reactive or proactive, we're going to look at the encounter details, we're going to look at transaction details, we're going to look at the account details, and then we're going to decide what to do with that credit. We're going to either decide to issue a refund, or we can decide to apply that credit to an encounter that has no balance on it. And we'll do that for each one of the credits. And when we get done with that, the ones that we've identified as refunds, that information is going to get over to accounting somehow. And how it gets over to accounting happens in various ways, from practice to practice, health center to health center. It happens on a piece of paper, it happens on a spreadsheet, it happens just through word of mouth, people walking up to each other and say, have a credit that needs to have refund, this is the person, this is the amount of the credit, can you take care of that for me? So it gets over to accounting, and then accounting has to enter that information into the accounting application in order to print the refund checks. And then on the back end, once all the refund checks are printed, some practices and some health centers enter that information back into NextGen manually. Other health centers and practices don't do that, so that's a step that's left undone. So as I mentioned, we looked at this process from start to finish, and we looked for ways that we could apply technology to the process and ways that we could streamline and automate the process. And as you look at the screen here, the grayed out boxes are the ones where we've been able to apply technology to the process. So through the front end on the billing side, through the search mechanisms and the filters that we've created, we've been able to streamline that process to make it much easier for you to identify the credits on the patient accounts and take an action on that credit. On the accounting side, like I mentioned, we're able to integrate with your accounting applications. So we've taken out the step where you have to manually enter that information into the accounting system, and it gets over there, in a file. And then on the back end, we've automated a process where we can bring the printed check information back over into NextGen and update the patient account with that information. So we call it streamlining on the front end and automation on the back end. You'll see in the demonstration three modules that make up Refund Manager. the Credit Scout module, the Batch Detective module, and the Importer module. The Credit Scout module is the one that you will use to find the credits on the patient accounts and to be able to take action on those credit balances. And then the Batch Detective module is the module that will bring the refund information over into the accounting application. And then the importer module, the last module that you'll see in the demonstration, is the module that brings the printed check information as far as the check number, check date, check amount. Bring that over and update the patient account in NextGen with that information. So you'll see these three modules in action in the demonstration. So that's Refund Manager, the recap of Refund Manager, and the overview of what that is. With the Unapplied Deposit Manager software, again, the purpose of the Unapplied Deposit Manager software is to make the job easier and increase productivity. You'll see that all of the products that we have developed at Attentive over the years is really focused on doing just that, making your job easier and increasing productivity. With the Unapplied and Deposit Manager, it's been a development, well, I should say for about 10 years, we've been developing for our clients scripts and programs, small programs to have them address their unapplied balances on patient accounts. And what we learned over those 10 years is that the amount of unapplied balances grows in terms of the number of instances that are out there and the overall dollar amount for various reasons, from an organization to an organization. One of the reasons is co-payments when they're taken at when the patient checks in, but they don't get applied later, so the unapplied balance grows. Another reason is deposit money is taken in advance of an upcoming procedure, and that money sits out there as well in the system. What we've also learned over the past 10 years when we've been writing these scripts and small programs for our clients is there's the business rules that they want to apply to managing these unapplied balances is different from organization to organization. Some want to be able to push the line items into a credit state when we're applying the distributing the unapplied balances so it can be refunded. Others don't want that to happen. Some want us to look at specific dollar amounts that match their copay amounts. So there's many different reasons how they want to be able to handle this, and we've incorporated all of this into the application. So what we did is we brought all of this information and knowledge that we've gathered over the years and created this robust, flexible product to help billing staffs. So right, I mean, we're using technology to improve things, and that's it's a beautiful thing, right? We're using technology to automate repetitive and manual processes so that people can be freed up to do other things. So we're improving productivity. So you'll see this product and how it works as well in the demonstration. So what I'm going to do now is going to turn it over to Joe, and Joe's going to take you through the demonstration of both products and show you how both products can help you become more efficient, more effective in managing your copay dollars, your credit balances, refund checks, deposit monies as well. Okay, Joe.
All right, great. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Chelsea, and thank you everyone for attending today. I appreciate you taking a few minutes out of your schedule midday to look at our tools here that we have to help you out. I'm going to take you through how this stuff actually works. We've seen the slides. Let's get into the nuts and bolts here on how this actually helps you. We're going to start with Refund Manager, and Refund Manager is out there to help you streamline and automate your handling of line item credit balances in NextGen. When we install our tools, we register them as add-ons in NextGen, and that way we're able to pass off the current user and current database so that if you're logged in as yourself and you're in NG Test, Refund Manager runs in that context that NextGen is in. So it makes it easier where you don't have to manage multiple logins, worry if Refund Manager is pointing to test and NextGen is pointing to prod, those kinds of things. So we have done the work up front to keep it in sync for you and make it easy to use. Refund Manager has been around a long time. We created it back in 2015. So June of this year, or back in 2005, so in June of this year is 15 years for Refund Manager. And it's grown quite a bit from the simple export utility it was in the early days into this full-fledged credit handling tool that lets you move money around, refund money, put it to the work log for future research. It integrates with a dozen accounting systems directly, and we have several more that customers have created their own integrations for. So as Tom mentioned about the Refund Manager modules, we're going to spend most of our time here in the Credit Scout. That's the next-gen facing piece of Refund Manager. We're going to take a look at your credits that are sitting out there. We're going to process some credits. We're going to move some around, and we're going to put some to refund. The ones that we put to refund, we're going to need to get out to the accounting system. For our demo environment today, that's QuickBooks, but it could be any of 12 supported accounting systems and several others that are available via CSV files or XML files. So to get that information, those refunds out to the accounting system, we're going to use the second icon at the top here, the batch detective. And that's going to find your next-gen batches that contain one or more refund transactions. And kind of the cool thing about that is it will send out the transactions regardless of if you created them automatically in Refund Manager or you did them by hand in NextGen. At the end of the day, they're both just refund transactions, so it knows how to pick them out of the batch and push them into the accounting system. So we'll go into that as step 2. And then the last piece to kind of close out the loop is we're going to pull back the check information from the accounting system so you have that check number, check date, check amount in NextGen available for the front desk and other NextGen users. So when someone calls looking for a refund, you can say, oh, it was sent out on this date for this amount, and you're able to close that loop without having to call accounting and have them go look it up in the financial system. So let's jump in here to the Credit Scout and see how this works. The Credit Scout functionality was written to mirror the type of functionality you work with in the NextGen practice management system. So the screens use the right mouse for little pop-up menus. The top of the screen is your search criteria. The bottom of your screen is the results grid. And all this was very intentional to make learning Refund Manager very easy. If someone's used to working in NextGen, within a short amount of time, they can get the flow of Refund Manager down. Up in the search criteria, there's several ways we implement searching, and Tom mentioned in his slides that sometimes you're being proactive, sometimes you're being reactive. So if you're being reactive and you need to search just for a particular person, you can go ahead and put their name in here and pull up just that one person. If you have a list of encounter numbers or account numbers that you're going to pull in, you can go ahead and enter those in and separate them by commas and pull those all up at once if you know you're going to be working that specific set. That's a good way to get those exact hits, or if you have a separate credit handling process in parallel with Refund Manager and you're just giving someone a report of, hey, go look at these accounts or encounters and pull them up in Refund Manager and go ahead and click checkboxes and create the refunds. So those ones are nice. When you know what you're looking for, you can get right to them. Most of the time, though, we're in a mode where we're going after refunds that are sitting out there in the system or more appropriately, credits that are sitting out there in the system that we may not know about. So then we're going to search by a date range. And I have this wide open on my test system because it's a demo database, and I don't have all the current data that you have in your database. But typically, if you're caught up, you're going to do a window that starts at about 60 days back in the calendar and goes out, maybe to 120 days or 150 days back in the calendar. And that's going to be your window of sweet spot opportunity that you're going to keep kind of moving forward each day, where the encounters and charges have gone through the claims process, everything's settled out, and now there's credits sitting out there. Now we have some clients who come to us and say, you know what, we're like months or years behind on catching up these credit balances that are out there, in which case you can start in the past and kind of work it in chunks of, maybe 30, 60, 90, 180 days, whatever works for you. The whole key here is to do these searches for the credit balance requires some effort on the database to return you the results. So the key is we don't want to spend time searching for 3,000 credits when you only have time to work 200 of them. All right, so we want to set the amount of results we're bringing back to be commensurate with the amount of work you have time to do. So you're not spending all that time searching in the database and tying up the database, and you're going to get through a percentage of them and then, not go through the others. So this gives you a nice targeted window of which you're working those credits that are sitting out there. The other thing to keep in mind too, with refunds, you're ultimately sending money out of the practice, so you want to balance that with your cash flow. Right, in the first month, you don't want to catch up on 2 years worth of back refunds because you may not have any cash left in the bank. So again, we give you ways to manage that either by searching for exact hits or searching for date ranges and processing the credits that are sitting out there within those date ranges. Now, if you think about your credits in NextGen, the credits may be out there for various reasons. So we give you some ways of kind of filtering down those credits that you want to look for. Typically in Refund Manager, you're looking for things that you can refund or things that you can move around. Okay, those are the types of credits. So if we look at these 3 items here, these are filters that help us look for things that we're gonna, basically credits that we're gonna refund. Down here, these 2 are credits that we're gonna go ahead and move around. Now also, if you're thinking about credits in NextGen, some of your credits are out there because they truly overpaid, and some of them are out there because someone did some bad adjustments. So we give you ways to look at the transactions and make sure, let's make sure that the patient payment and third-party payments overall is greater than the charge amount. Or if we're just doing insurance refunds, focus on the third-party payments being greater than the charge amount. So that gives you other ways to kind of slice and dice it and filter down to the credits that you're looking for. If you think about this process in kind of your high school or college test-taking scheme, where they tell you to go through and do the easy questions first, go back, do the next questions, and then spend the time on the questions that you just couldn't get at first glance. That's typically how we recommend processing these credits. You can filter down to get the easiest ones, then you relax the filtering a little bit and process that next set and so on. So these tools are out there, and again, as part of training, we'll go through this with you in more detail to help you figure out which ones you want and the amount of effort to put into them. What I'm going to do to start our demonstration is we'll go through and we'll look at some credits that we can move around out there. So there might be a credit balance on one charge or encounter overall that we want to move elsewhere instead of sending out of the practice. So I can go ahead and pick on there. Let's look for our distribution candidates. For the sake of the demo, I'm not going to care about the transaction filtering. All right, so in a second we'll hit find, but I just want to cover the second line here where we can also slice and dice by location, provider, department, financial class. So if you're looking for particular items in the database, you have ways to get to them directly instead of scrolling through a bunch of results. Another great feature that's in here is the appointment skip days. Let's take the case where someone has a credit out there, but they have an appointment in 2 days. Well, you may not want to send a refund check because they may come in and go, well, hey, I had that credit. Can I use that as my copay on my new encounter? So you can pick the number of days that you want to skip there. So if they have an appointment in the next 7 days or 30 days, don't show it in the results here to be worked because you may want to keep that one in the system and keep the money in the practice. Refund Manager is multi-practice aware, so if your user ID has access to several practices in NextGen, you'll have access to that view in Refund Manager too. If you're a single practice, that's fine. Again, it's all limited by what your user ID in NextGen has access to. So normally we'd set our criteria up on top, we'd come in, we'd click find, it'll run through your NextGen financials and find the credits that meet the criteria up above. There's a couple of these that I use for demonstration purposes. I'm going to jump right to them, but normally you just kind of work down the list here. So I'm going to start with Shirley. And what we're seeing at this top level is the guarantor, the balances, and some other pertinent information that may be helpful if you're trying to work refunds in a certain order. But we can see here for Shirley that there's a $50 credit in the patient bucket because these are distribution candidates. We only use it to move around patient money because of all the various rules for insurance money. And you say, that's great, $50, it's there, but how do I know more about it? Well, there's several ways. We give you a lot of tools in NextGen to be able to research these balances. So if I click the little plus sign, the expansion indicator, we can go down several levels. So we start out at the guarantor level, then we go down to the practice and account level. So this is the medical group practice, account number 289. Then we go down to who's the owner of that credit. Is it an insurance? Is it the guarantor in this case? And then the encounter and charge that have the credit on them. If we want to see additional information that mimics the encounter transaction screen in the chart, we can click on the encounter number, and then we get the charges and the transactions that were put out there. If we want to see the charge ledger, we can go ahead and click on the charge, and again, it'll show us the charge and what the balances are in the various buckets for the charge. Additionally, if you're looking for a more holistic view, you can go ahead and select screens that mimic the financial summary and account summary in NextGen. And kind of the nice thing about the account summary is it gives you the full view. And these mimic your NextGen screens. So if you're in the account and you hit the account summary tab, you can get a view of all of their dependents and their encounters and their balances and such, and be able to research these out. Now, in this case, let's say we did our research and we do want to go ahead and do a distribution. We want to move the money around. There's two ways to do that. There's an automated way that goes oldest to newest and makes it really simple for you. And then there's a manual way where you can kind of match things up. So the first one I'm going to do is that automated way where it just starts with the oldest credit and the oldest debit and starts applying until it runs out of one or the other. Now, to make things happen in Refund Manager, what we do during our research here through the grid is we pick an appropriate checkbox. So this D checkbox is the distribution, the R is the refund, and the T is the task where we're going to put it out to the work log. For this part of the demo, we're going to do the distribution, so I can go ahead and click that. And then if I want, I can go on and work my next guarantor that I pick out here down below. If I want to see what it's going to do, I can right mouse and pick the distribution preview. And what it's going to show me on this screen, it really splits down the middle here. So the left half is where the money's coming from, and the right half is where the money's going to. So NextGen Medical Group, this particular person, Shirley, encounter 1212, this particular charge. It's going to subtract $50 from the $50 credit. And in this case, it's just misposted between charges. So it was all put on one charge, and now we need to move it to another charge on the same encounter. So that's really what it's showing you here. So when we give it the go ahead in a minute, it's going to create that transaction for you. And really all you did is pick a checkbox. All right, you don't have to go in and type in all the numbers and pull up the encounters and move the money between them. Now let's say, yeah, that's great, but you don't want to do oldest to newest. Well, I have this other demo case that I've set up here for Oscar. And again, we'll pick the distribution checkbox, we'll right mouse, but instead of preview, well, let me do preview first. That's a good example. So we can see encounter 1213, we're initially going to pull $236 of the $295 credit and push that into another encounter from 1213 to 1214 on a particular sim that has a $236 balance. And then we're going to go down here with the remaining $59, and we're going to push it over here to this other encounter, 1215, and it's going to partially pay the 59 of the $67 balance. Now let's say you wanted to flip that. We wanted to make sure 1215 gets paid because that particular sim we want to take care of before other ones. Well, what we can do is instead of using the default functionality of oldest to newest, we can manually match those distributions. So I can take my credit here of $295, and remember on the other screen, it applied to the 236 first, and then it partially applied the 67. Well, if you want to do the 67 first, you just click checkboxes and pair them up. And down here, it's saying it's taking it from one side, putting it to the other side, the $67. And then if I want to partially pay this other one, I can go ahead and pair them up. So I've kind of reversed the order, and you can choose just to do one of them or all of them. It's really up to you. And when we give it the go-ahead, Refund Manager is going to go out and create those distributions for us. In fact, right now we can tell it, we're done with distributions, go ahead and process those. Here's the transaction code from NextGen we're going to use. We have our batches already set up, so it'll keep using those batches until they're posted or deleted. And instead of us going and creating those credits and moving that around, we just click the mouse a couple times and boom, they've been done for us and put in our batch. And we'll go look at that batch in a second after we do some of our refunds. So I'm going to go here and change my filtering to get the credits that are out there that exceed the amounts owed that are good candidates for refunds. So now I have a different set of results that we can go ahead and do refunds on. And again, similar to everything else, we can go ahead and click the plus sign, expand these. In this case for Jennifer, it's $122, but it comes from several different encounters. For the refunds, we can also refund back to insurances. This case here, Tiffany has a $92 refund, and it's due to a couple different insurances on different encounters. So we can pick, if we just want to refund one of them, we'll click down lower in the hierarchy. If we want to refund both of them, we can go ahead and click further up in the hierarchy. And again, you can click on the encounter number and see the transactions and verify that, yeah, it's, there aren't a lot of adjustments in this one, so it's an easy refund for me to hit. So we'd work down several of these and pick which ones, do our research. I'm kind of going through the process fast here for demo purposes, but we can pick the ones that we want to go ahead and issue those refunds for. Now, if we run across some distributions, we can go ahead and do those at the same time. There's no rule that says they have to be separate iterations through the results here. You can do them both together or do them both separately. I just wanted to show you how the filtering worked, and you got different results for both of them. But now if we want to do those refunds, we've clicked the R checkbox. We tell it to go ahead and process. Here's our transaction codes from NextGen. Our batches are still there. We haven't posted them yet. So we can go ahead and click start. And instead of us going and creating those 8 refund transactions, the system just did it for you in a fraction of a second. Okay, this is the streamlining part of Refund Manager, where you are being given the list, a workable report, the tools to research it, and instead of doing the heavy lifting of creating the transactions, you're just clicking checkboxes and it's doing the work for you. So now that we have those distributions and refunds out there in NextGen, they're part of our NextGen batch, we can go here, look at our batch. I'll go ahead and balance out the batch, and then we'll post it, and we'll see what this activity looks like in NextGen. Also in these batches, I can intermix transactions that I've done manually. Like I said earlier, Refund Manager, a refund transaction is a refund transaction, whether you did it through the Credit Scout and Refund Manager, or you're already in NextGen working on something and it's just easier to type it in at that point. So now we have our batch posted, and we can see down here on the bottom where we use the transfer patient payment transaction code, these are our distributions. So I can go up and say, you know what, let's take a look at one of those. We'll pick account number 290. And we can go into the account summary and see the transactions that were created. The net is 0 because it's a positive and negative of the same amount because it's a move, but we can see what's going on here, the 2 different transactions. At the account level on the encounter, we can see how those were applied. Okay, it creates notes for you about the process so you can see what batch it was in, where it came from, where it went to. It also creates on the encounter some encounter notes, so you have the documentation there also and can use that as an audit trail. So Refund Manager doing all this work on your behalf for the distributions, the moves. Similarly, we do the same thing with the refunds. So we can go ahead and look at Jennifer here. who had several encounters that are being refunded. And if I go into the transaction view, we'll see here's our patient refund, and each of these encounters had one. Right now in the transaction notes, it just has the batch. The great thing is when you send this to accounting and accounting prints the checks, you can pull back that check information and that'll be here on the transaction notes. So you'll have that in NextGen. Similarly, we're also creating the encounter notes here for you. So you have that audit of, who it was going to and what time and who did it, all that great stuff. And then when we export it to the accounting system, we'll get another note that has the fact it was exported, the date, time, obviously from the note, and then the address that was in play when it was exported, right? Because now we can have the standard addresses and the refund addresses, and we want to know which one was sent to the accounting system. So we'll capture that in the note when we go back to Refund Manager and do the export of those refund transactions into the accounting system. Now this export can be done the same day, it can be done several days later, whatever your preferred process is. So we can come in here and find our batches that are available to be exported out that contain one or more refund transactions and they haven't been exported yet. So this is the one that we just posted. I'm going to go ahead and say export, and what it's going to do is, depending on your accounting system, is it's either going to talk directly to the accounting system and set up the vendor and the payment, maybe a permanent vendor or temporary vendor, depending on your accounting system. For the payment, for many of the accounting systems that are supported, we can do some GL mapping. So if you're mapping by provider or location or a combination, we can map those to GL codes in your accounting system. And then, like I was saying, it'll talk directly to the accounting system or create files that your accounting system can read in, so you're not having to key all that information back in on the accounting side. For QuickBooks, the way I have it interfaced at the moment, it'll go ahead and talk to it. So instead of me or you creating these transactions in QuickBooks, we go ahead and say we want to export it out, hit the export button. And right now it's creating those checks in the accounting system without us having to do the work. So now if we're on the accounting side of the house, we're happy because we got out of the data entry business there too, just like with those transactions in NextGen. And we pull up our accounting system and we have our transactions in here queued up, ready to go. You do your review, you go ahead if you need to on your accounting system, convert the payable batch to a check batch, and you print the checks. So we can go ahead and say, you know what, let's print our batch, lists our checks. Again, similar things in various accounting systems. I'm just going to dump these to a file so that I don't waste paper. If any printed incorrectly, I'd go ahead and handle that still in the accounting system. And now each of these have check numbers assigned to them. So accounting's job also, they get a bit of relief from Refund Manager. In fact, quite a bit of relief, because a lot of the time is really spent doing the data entry of 50 or 100 or several hundred refunds into the accounting system. So to close out the Refund Manager side of the demo, as I promised, we're going to be able to pull this check information, check number, check date, check amount from the accounting system back into NextGen. So we'll go back to our Refund Manager. Again, same day, could be several days in the future. We'll find our exports that are sitting out there. We had more refunds, but it consolidated several of them that were to the same person into a single check. So because it's QuickBooks, we can simply right mouse and import payments. If it was another accounting system where we had to pass files back and forth, we just go ahead here, navigate to the file and say import files. But again, with QuickBooks, I'm going to go ahead and pick this, select import, and it went out there, found the 8 matching refunds in NextGen and the 5 matching checks in QuickBooks, and it went ahead and updated that in NextGen. So if we go back here to our practice management and we go back to Jennifer. So now if we go here to those transactions, we have the check number, check date, and check amount. And again, we consolidated these 3 payments over the 3 encounters for Jennifer. So it came out to a total of $122. So that information is available for you in NextGen, so you don't have to query accounting every time someone asks about a refund payment. Additionally, when we did the export, as I was talking about before, we went ahead and created that additional encounter note. So you have a way to track it through the process, right? You can see here that the refund was created. You can see here that it was exported, and then you can see from the transaction note that it was sent out and imported back in. So that's Refund Manager. Refund Manager, again, is about streamlining and automating the refund process. It's broader than just refunds. It's grown over the years where it's become a full credit balance management system where you can move around credits in addition to just doing refunds and interfaces with a number of different accounting systems. So switching up here, now that we've covered the walkthrough of Refund Manager, let's go ahead and talk about the other side of the credit equation in NextGen, which are your unapplied credits. Refund Manager handles your line item credits. We have the Unapplied and Deposit Manager to handle your unapplied credits. So the Unapplied and Deposit Manager is a little different of a tool than Refund Manager is. Refund Manager is meant to be interactive, where you're evaluating those credits and sending them either to another encounter where money's owed or out of the practice. For the reason that money is leaving the practice, that's why we have Refund Manager be interactive instead of it waking up every night and sending money away. But for the unapplieds, because the money's staying within the four walls of the practice, we have the ability to do more batch operations on those and more processing overnight. So with the unapplieds, it's a little different, where the user interface for this, you're really just setting up rules that a job will run for you overnight when the system's not as loaded and move around your unapplied balances. Now we call this Unapplied and Deposit Manager. So it's a little bit of a differentiator between some of the capabilities built into NextGen already for doing like exact match application of unapplieds, things like that. What we've done is we've taken all of those cases we've written unapplied scripts for against the NextGen database to move money around behind the scenes, and we've built them into kind of one master tool where you can select which of those rules you need for your situation. So if we look at this screen, this upper left box here are the basic rules for your encounter unapplied, how you're going to handle those unapplied sitting on specific encounters. In the upper right here are the rules for how you're going to handle your account unapplieds. So those unapplieds that are shareable amongst encounters under the overall account. As I go through these, I'm going to get into what differentiates the typical unapplied problem with the ongoing process of managing unapplieds as deposits against future services. So sometimes with unapplieds, they're put out there purely for the sake of the money's taken at patient check-in. It's not necessarily deposit against future services so much as it's a deposit against today's service. And sometimes those get applied right away. Sometimes they sit out there and they just keep piling up over time. And, after a while, you have a huge problem on your hand trying to clean those up. So going through the encounter unapplied rules first, we have the basic one, right? This is the one everyone expects. If the unapplied amount equals the patient amount on the encounter, yeah, go ahead and apply it. That just makes perfect sense. But what if the unapplied amount is greater than the patient amount? What do you want to do with that? Well, you have a couple options in that case. One is to apply it up to the patient amount and leave the rest in unapplied. And the other is to apply it and leave a credit. Okay, that'll result in a line item credit, which guess what? If you have Refund Manager, you can then use Refund Manager to either move that line item credit to another encounter or refund it out back to the patient. So you have a couple different options here. Again, we allow you to pick the one of the two that works best or neither for your practice. If the unapplied amount is less than the patient amount, again, you have the option to turn off whether to apply it or not. Kind of another cool thing in here that we created for clients who are doing cleanup of copays is we had a number of them that wanted to force the copay amount onto the line items regardless. It was kind of an 80-20 thing. They figured in the majority of cases it's going to be right. They'll go through the batch after the work is done and prune out the ones they don't want. So we give you this screen that pops up when you pick to use this, where you can put in your common copay amounts, and it'll remember this box for future uses. But we can put in a number of these that we want to use, and that'll be the amounts. If the unapplied amount on the encounter is equal to one of these amounts, in this case, it'll force it down, and if necessary, it'll create a credit because it belongs on that encounter. And again, in which case, then with Refund Manager, since it's a line item credit now, you could look at potentially refunding it. So that type of stuff is available to you in this tool also. Now, for our demonstration today, I'm going to turn this off because I want to talk about what happens if the unapplied amount has a remainder on the encounter. So we have several different options down at the bottom here. So if there's unapplieds remaining on the encounter, we could just simply create a task. All right, and then someone could go through manually and figure out what to do with those. Or if you want, we can have it automatically moved up to the account level, where then it could be used on the account side processing against other encounters. All right, so that's kind of a powerful thing to be able to take the remaining unapplied amount and move it up to the account. But the really cool thing you can do with this, and this gets into deposit management, is you can move it up to the account and you can earmark it for a future use. And that's the deposit management piece of this, what we call tag sets. So as part of the tag sets, we're basically taking a transaction code that was used to post the amount that's being put to unapplied and cross-referencing that to various modalities and or specific SIM codes. So over here, this one is set up for fertility. So we go ahead and we free text what we want to name the tag. And we say basically for it to meet the criteria of belonging to that tag, it has to be this transaction code. And then every night when it wakes up, it's going to go ahead and look for the corresponding rules for where to apply that tag. And for that patient, it's going to look for charges that contain either ones that belong to this modality or this particular charge. You can set it up either way or both as we have here. So it'll go ahead and go down through these rules, whether you have one of them or several of them, and apply those amounts ongoing in the future, so you don't have to worry about people remembering to pull deposits from unapplied over time. In fact, if you let the system do the majority of the work and then you just have one or two people who handle the exceptions, you can automate the flow of those deposits against future work done, and you don't have to worry about manually going and applying that work. It's waking up every night and it's doing this cross-reference. Do I have money in account unapplied that I can put down to the appropriate encounters with the right charges that match here? So this is a really powerful facility of the Unapplied and Deposit Manager to help you out so you're not in the unapplied business every day having people reposting those unapplied down to line items. And that's really what the tagging says. So we can say here, yep, go ahead and use that tag set. When we move it up to the account, try and earmark it for something. Also, you can take those unapplieds that you're taking for deposits and obviously post them direct to the account if you want. So we want to pick up and tag those ones too. So over here on the account side, we're first going to look for the ones that are earmarked for a specific use, and that's what these three checkboxes are about. Look for them, use them, and then if you did use them somewhere on that particular account, skip the bottom general rules, okay, for unapplieds. So if you kind of think it out, there's kind of your, yeah, we're not really doing deposits, we just have an unapplied mess because we never get around to applying them within the same encounters and stuff. And then there's those of you who are taking deposits against future services, and that's really what this tagging is about, is this checkbox here and these top three here. Now, if you're not doing deposits and you're just cleaning up, again, you have the general rules that you'd expect. So do we want to apply to the first matching, balance? Do we just want to apply from the oldest amount owed to the newest? So we can go ahead and do that. If there's still remaining unapplied amounts on the account, do you want to force it down onto the most recent encounter with a credit? If there is no encounter with a credit, do you want to just put it all on the newest encounter? So you get them out of unapplied and down in the line items, and then you can do something with them in Refund Manager. You could refund them out at that point. And again, similar to the other side, you can create a task also, so you can have people just work it in the work log as opposed to the system automatically moving. You could also leave the task out there just for validation because it's not mutually exclusive. So you can have the tasks in addition to it doing the work, just so someone can go in and review what's being done. All right, so those are quite a few options available to you, both for the encounter unapplieds and the account unapplieds, where we're trying to move them down to encounters. This middle section of the screen here is really about scoping. So for the encounters, we want to limit it to, certain SIMs and modalities. We want to limit it to certain providers. Maybe we're testing and we don't want to chew up all our test data right away. We just want to work with specific subsets. Maybe we're testing the system in production. And again, we don't want to do everything right away. So maybe we're going to pick a provider and a date range and be able to kind of scope down the amount of work that we're doing here. So this side here is for the encounter scoping, and on the right here is for the account scoping. Now, in a production situation, you'd go ahead and select whether you want it to, run it all, run once, run nightly, and you'd hit save, and then each night this rule would be run and batches would be available for you in NextGen. In fact, you can set the descriptions that you want for those batches in NextGen. When you're testing it, we give you the ability to run short amounts of unapplied processing up to 5 minutes. So if you're on your test system, we can go ahead and run this interactively, which is what I'm going to do here in my demo because it's a smaller system and no one's on it. So I can go ahead and say, you know what, go ahead and run these, and it's going to show me the transactions that were created in NextGen in this grid down here. I can go ahead and save that out to Excel for future reference if we want. But more importantly, we can come over here into NextGen and see those batches that were just created. So normally you'd come in the next morning and you'd review your batches. You can, again, just standard NextGen batches. You can go ahead and open them up, scroll through them, delete anything you don't like out of them. All right, so really it's doing the work you do in NextGen on your behalf, and then you get the ability to sign off on it by posting those batches. If you want, you can post them interactively, or you can balance them out right and send them to the BBP to go ahead and be handled. Now, if you're testing and you don't like the results, you can simply delete those batches, go back here to the Unapplied Deposit Manager, adjust your parameters, and run it again. Now, the way we install this tool is we work with you just like we do with Refund Manager on the installation. We handhold you through the process. So we'll go through some of the common scenarios and help you find a set of rules that work best for your environment. So that's the Unapplied and Deposit Manager. It's more of a batch-oriented tool. The user interface just sets the rules that are going to be used each night as the stored procedure runs. That stored procedure can be set up in the BBP to run at your favorite time of night, and it'll create those batches. They'll be available for you the next morning. It can move around balances, and it can handle those deposits by mapping the intake transaction code to the SIMs or groupings of SIMs, which are modalities. Tom, I'll go ahead and turn it back to you. I know we're tight on time.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So thank you for going through that. And let's see here. Oops. Thank you for going through that, Joe, and on those two products. Just take a couple minutes, tell you a little bit about us and who we are, and then we can get into the questions. We were founded in 2003, and our We have 20 plus years of experience with NextGen. We have over 40 employees in the company, most of which are consultants that travel from practice to practice, house center to house center, working with the organizations to get as much value out of NextGen as possible. And you take 2003 into 20 years, they don't add up. And the reason for that is I tend to have started out as the IT department for a medical organization. And back in the late 90s and early 2000s, when the business mantra back then was focus on what you do best and outsource the rest, the medical organization was going to outsource the IT group. And the leaders of the IT group said, well, if you want to do that, what we'd like to do is form our own company and provide services back to you. So they agreed to do that, and from that point forward, we've worked with over 350 to 400 clients that use NextGen, and we've become a strategic partner with NextGen as well. We generate our revenue through basically 6 revenue streams. And as far as next steps goes, if as you're thinking about the 2 products and how they can help you become more productive and more efficient, more effective in managing your copays and your credit balances and your unapplied balances and refund checks. If you want to have a more in-depth discussion about it, or maybe see a more in-depth demonstration so that you can ask questions as it specifically pertains to your organization and to your processes, give me a call or send me an email, or give Joe a call and send him an email, and we can schedule a time to talk to you in more detail about it. So with that, what we'll do now is just take a couple minutes and answer any questions that you have.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you, Joe, for the demonstration. Again, if you have questions, you can type them in the questions area of the webinar control panel. We only have a couple, so if you have questions, we do have time to answer them. So just type them and we'll read them in the order that we received them. So first question, how long does it typically take for departments to understand how to use these new products?
Normally it's pretty quick. For the Refund Manager, we give you some training videos because that's more of an interactive tool. Again, we like everyone to watch them who's going to be using the tool, and you don't have to memorize them because really the workflow becomes fairly straightforward. We'll also give you the user guide, but then what we'll do is once it's installed in your test environment, we'll do a Q&A call with you where we'll spend 60 or 90 minutes walking through some credit scenarios and showing you how it works. As you saw today, the workflow of that is really straightforward. On the Unapplied and Deposit Manager, that one is a little more involved because we'll sit down with you and better understand your unapplied issues and what angle you're looking for and what way you want to tackle it first, and then we'll help you create some rules to handle the majority of those. So it really, time-wise, depends on your availability, the level of problem that you have in the organization that you're trying to fix. But kind of the thing to note is both of these are really a hand-holding situation where we work with you to make sure that when we're done showing you how to use the tool, you actually know how to use them. And that's really what we're looking for at the end of the day.
Great, thank you, Joe. Next question. Will we be able to use Refund Manager when NextGen version 5.9.2020.1 comes out?
Yes, Refund Manager, we keep that current with NextGen. We've been doing that again for 15 years now. In fact, the first version of Refund Manager was written for NextGen 3.4, and then we moved it up to 5.2 shortly after, and we've kept it current. So that's part of our job, is to keep it current with NextGen. Fortunately, the data structures for this side of NextGen don't really change a whole lot, just because there's a lot of past history.
Okay, well, it looks like that's all the questions that we have right now. If you have questions, if you think of them after the fact, you see both Tom and Joe's information up on the screen. Feel free to reach out to them directly. Otherwise, you can always reply back to my email that I'll be sending out with a link to the slides and the recording within the next week here. Basically, any way that you can get a hold of us, we're happy to help. We're happy to answer any questions you might have, so feel free to reach out to us. Thank you for joining us. And again, if you feel like learning more about ChartGuard on Tuesday, feel free to join us for that webinar as well. Thank you everyone for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you.